glasses and cigars between. "It's a presumption on royal authority to summon you from the ballroom," he began, after they had seated themselves and filled glasses. "You are quite the cynosure, you know." "I'm grateful to your Majesty. It's both comfortable and quiet here, and I can sit down. Your Majesty was the center of attention in the throne room, yet I seem to detect a look of relief as you left it." "I try to hide it as much as possible." The old king took off the little gold-circled cap and hung it on the back of his chair. "Majesty can be rather wearying, you know." So he could come here and put it off. Trask felt that some gesture should be made on his own part. He unfastened the dress-dagger from his belt and laid it on the table. The king nodded. "Now we can be a couple of honest tradesmen, our shops closed for the evening, relaxing over our wine and tobacco," he said. "Eh, Goodman Lucas?" It seemed like an initiation into a secret society whose ritual he must guess at step by step. "Right, Goodman McKill." They lifted their glasses to each other and drank. Goodman McKill offered cigars, and Goodman Lucas held a light for him. "I hear a few hard things about your trade, Goodman Lucas." "All true, and mostly understated. We're professional murderers and robbers, as one of my fellow tradesmen says. The worst of it is that robbery and murder become just that, a trade, like servicing robots or selling groceries." "Yet you fought 2 other space Vikings to cover my cousin's crippled Victrix. Why?" So he must tell his tale, so worn and smooth again. King McKill's cigar went out while he listened. "And you have been hunting him ever since? And now you can't be sure whether you killed him or not." "I'm afraid I didn't. The man in the screen is the only man Dunnan can really trust. One or the other would stay wherever he has his base all the time." "And when you do kill him, what then?" "I'll go on trying to make a civilized planet of Tanith. Sooner or later, I'll have one quarrel too many with King Angus, and then we will be Our Majesty Lucas the First of Tanith, and we will sit on a throne and receive our subjects. And I'll be glad when I can get my crown off and talk to a few men who call me shipmate instead of Your Majesty." "Well, it would violate professional ethics for me to advise a subject to renounce his sovereign, of course, but that might be an excellent thing. You met the ambassador from Ithaval at dinner, did you not? 3 centuries ago, Ithaval was a colony of Marduk. It seems we can't afford colonies anymore. And it seceded from us. Ithaval was then a planet like your Tanith seems to be. Today it is a civilized world, and one of Marduk's best friends. You know, sometimes I think a few lights are coming on again, here and there in the old Federation. If so, you space Vikings are helping to light them." "You mean the planets we use as bases, and the things we teach the locals?" "That too, of course. Civilization needs civilized technologies. But they have to be used for civilized ends. Do you know anything about a space Viking raid on Aton over a century ago?" 6 ships from Hulticlear, 4 destroyed, the other 2 returned damaged, and without booty. The King of Marduk nodded. "That raid saved civilization on Aton. There were 4 great nations. The 2 greatest were at the brink of war, and the others were waiting to pounce on the exhausted victor and then fight each other for the spoils. The Space Vikings forced them to unite. Out of that temporary alliance came the League for Common Defense, and from that the Planetary Republic. The Republic's a dictatorship now, and just between Goodman McKill and Goodman Lucas it's a nasty one, and Our Majesty's government doesn't like it at all. It will be smashed sooner or later, but they'll never go back to divided sovereignty and nationalism again. The Space Vikings frightened them out of that when the dangers inherent in it couldn't. Maybe this man Dunnan will do the same for us on Marduk." "You have troubles?" "You've seen decivilized planets. How does it happen?" I know how it's happened on a good many. War, destruction of cities and industries, survivors among ruins, too busy keeping their own bodies alive to try to keep civilization alive. Then they lose all knowledge of how to be civilized. That's catastrophic decivilization. There is also decivilization by erosion, and while it's going on, nobody notices it. Everybody is proud of their civilization, their wealth and culture. But trade is falling off, fewer ships come in each year. So there is boastful talk about planetary self-sufficiency. Who needs off-planet trade anyhow? Everybody seems to have money, but the government is always broke. Deficit spending, and always the vital social services for which the government has to spend money. The most vital one, of course, is buying votes to keep the government in power, and it gets harder for the government to get anything done. The soldiers are sloppier at drill, and their uniforms and weapons aren't taken care of. The non-coms are insolent, and more parts of the city are dangerous at night, and then even in the daytime. And it's been years since a new building went up, and the old ones aren't being repaired anymore." Trask closed his eyes. Again he could feel the mellow sun of Graham on his back, and hear the laughing voices on the lower terrace. And he was talking to Lothar Fail and Rovard Grofus, and Alex Gorham and Cousin Nicolay and Otto Harkonnen. He said, "And finally nobody bothers fixing anything up, and the power reactors stop, and nobody seems to be able to get them started again. It hasn't quite gotten that far in the Sword Worlds yet." "It hasn't here either, yet." Goodman Mikhail slipped away, and King Mikhail VIII looked across the low table at his guest. "Prince Trask, have you heard of a man named Zaspar Makan?" "Occasionally. Nothing good about him." "He is the most dangerous man on this planet," the king said, "and I can make nobody believe it, not even my son." 21. Prince Bentric's 10-year-old son, Count Stephen of Ravery, wore the uniform of an ensign of the Royal Navy. He was accompanied by his tutor, an elderly Navy captain. They both stopped in the doorway of Trask's suite, and the boy saluted smartly. "Permission to come aboard, sir?" he asked. "Welcome aboard, Count. Captain. Belay the ceremony and find seats. You're just in time for a second breakfast." As they sat down, he aimed his ultraviolet light pencil at a serving robot. Unlike Mardukan robots, which looked like surrealist conceptions of pre-atomic armored knights, it was a smooth ovoid floating a few inches from the floor on its own contragravity. As it approached, its top opened like a bursting beetle shell, and hinged trays of food swung out. The boy looked at it in fascination. "Is that a Sword World robot, sir, or did you capture it somewhere?" "It's one of our own." He was pardonably proud. It had been built on Tanith a year before. "Has an ultrasonic dishwasher underneath, and it does some cooking on top at the back." The elderly captain was, if anything, even more impressed than his young charge. He knew what went into it, and he had some conception of the society that would develop things like that. "I take it you don't use many human servants, with robots like that," he said. "Not many. We're all low-population planets, and nobody wants to be a servant." "We have too many people on Marduk, and all of them want soft jobs as noble servants," the captain said. "Those that want any kind of jobs." "You need all the people for fighting men, don't you?" the boy Count asked. "Well, we need a good many. The smallest of our ships will carry 500 men, most of them around 800. The captain lifted an eyebrow. The complement of the Victrix had been 300, and she'd been a big ship. Then he nodded. "Of course, most of them are ground fighters." That started Count Stephen off. Questions about battles and raids and booty and the planets Trask had seen. "I wish I were a space Viking." "Well, you can't be, Count Ravery. You're an officer of the Royal Navy. You're supposed to fight space Vikings." I won't fight you,